we going to start now?
You can, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Definitely can.
Yeah. So perhaps we start here and then we bring in colleagues.
And it's live, right?
It's already live.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming here and attending the event, the side event that the title as the Informal Youth Summit of the Future and Local Pact of the Future. The name may sound interested to you with the name that is like Youth, Informal Youth Summit of the Future. And this is an idea that we generated earlier this year or last year, I would say that when we knew that the Summit of the Future going to take place at the UN headquarters in September. And we were heavily advocating about having youth voice included into the Summit of the Future rather than just have the consultations, because what was the situation is that people would come and would say that young people should submit their input and just do the consultations. So what our demand was to have more than what was a consultation. We wanted proper involvement into the planning process. We wanted to have a separate summit for the future for the young people. And we wanted just more than consultation. We want more than the input from young people, what I would say or term as tokenism for young people, like you would just use young people to say that, okay, they're here, one or two people are there, so we just have to take that item off the box, that's it, and you check that item and that's it. So we wanted more than that, so we came forward with the idea of having the Youth Summit of the Future, and then not just that, and also the 5 youth-led side events during the Summit of the Future. And then from there, we got the support, we gained the support of the UN agencies, the member states, and we came forward with the idea of having the Informal Youth Summit of the Future, which we are doing in September now. And today we will talk to you about the roadmap of what is the Informal Youth Summit of the Future, what is the roadmap moving forward in September, and how you can get involved with the Informal Youth Summit of the Future. And because it's all about young people, it's all about you. So we would expect all of you to be part of the planning process of what we are doing and help us organize the event, help us do, if you're not able to come in New York City and be part of the summit, maybe you want to do something in your own country or in your own city, we're happy to provide you with the available resources we may have to help you do that summit on the local level in your country. So we do have the capacity. So in this event, we are going to talk about in this event the roadmap. We would love to hear your ideas as well, like what do you think we should include in the informal summit, informal youth summit, and how we can make it more better. We know that we are doing it from 25th to 29th of this September in New York City. Venue will be announced later on, and then the idea of the local pact of for the future. Neo will talk a little bit more about the local pact, because you know that there is a pact that we are all working on, and youth voices are included in that. But the idea is to have more than just that and make it on the local level. So with that, Mira, I would like to welcome you. So you can have a few words.
Thank you very much, Ali. It's such a pleasure having the opportunity to contribute to the success of the UN ECOSOC Youth Forum. It's the most important youth event of the UN system, so it's really something very special. And we are here at the UN DGC Resource Center, UN Department for Global Communication. It's the task of this institution, this program, to connect the UN with the world, with the general public. And my organization, IAI, it's accredited to the Department for Global Communication, and we are building complementary programs and with a focus on youth. And that's what I'm now going to present you in a little bit more detail. We have some more speakers on the agenda, like Mariam Bukar Hassan, but she is also helping with bringing people in, so we will ask her to speak later. So now let's go to this presentation of the. Okay, can you help me with? I need. I would need this. Yeah. Okay, it's working now. So we have this year the UN Summit of the Future as the most important event of the UN system. It is the idea, it comes from the report, Our Common Agenda of the Secretary General, where he said, let's change the operation, the way the UN system operates so that it will be better prepared to address current and future challenges. And so there are several processes like the preparation of the digital compact and preparation for declaration for future generations. And there was last year a summit about innovating education systems. And somehow the highlight, culmination of all these efforts of thinking how global community can collaborate better will be this year in September, the UN Summit of the Future. And the outcome document, the result of this summit is a global pact for the future. And so it's some kind of social contract where different players in the UN system, primarily national governments, are reassuring the commitment for the common good and setting the modalities. And we said, okay, this is good, but we've had already similar documents before, signed, negotiated by national governments, signed by heads of states. But what is different? And so to make the Summit of the Future relevant for young people, for the people on the street, there need to be some social innovation. And that's why we came up with the idea of a local pact for the future. It's a social innovation enabled by digital innovation. And so I will present you now how we are working on this. So our organization is IAI, stands for International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges. So it's really exactly the same aim like the Summit of the Future. How can we innovate the UN system? How can we make it more effective? And we are building the Global Challenges Action Empowerment Ecosystem GloCha with culture, technology, and organizational innovation. It's some kind of complementary United Nations 2.0 for non-state actors. And because it's lacking, as you see, the possibilities for individuals, for civil society to co-decide the future of the world in the UN process is limited. So we have to develop new ecosystems that will connect the individual and the local communities with the global goals. And so we aim to empower everyone everywhere to take meaningful and rewarding climate action. And we have a very strong focus on knowledge. We are building the bridge between the UN and citizens, youth who are developing. We are developing solutions and building a community. Here are some images from places where we have been. For instance, we've had Digital Art for Climate initiative. The winners have been brought on the billboards in Shibuya in Tokyo. Our winners have been also on CNN. We are creating spaces. We are bringing youth and civil society and art to the UN here at the curved wall space, at the UN climate conferences. We have our digital innovation pavilion and much more. So these spaces, it's something very important. This year is also we have booked space for a festival or some kind of convention of our partners in Austria at the Lake Turnasee. We have booked a youth camp and a cultural center, and there we will bring our partners, potentially also you, if you are interested, to work on these new solutions for the local pact for the future, for music and art in support of the Summit of the Future and this kind of thing. So it's in real world, but we have also a very strong focus on the virtual world. We are developing streaming TV, entertainment and creative economy ecosystem, and some kind of super app for individual SDGs and climate action support. So this our local pacts for the future has been communicated in the context of the consultations for the Global Pact for the Future, and was also presented on several occasions at the Partnership Forum, Commission for Social Development. The idea is that we create the tools and the framework, reporting framework for individuals, especially young people, that they go out in their neighborhood and that they can identify challenges that they think they are important for them, for their well-being, for the well-being of their communities, and which are connected with global goals. And then these challenges are then put into an information system, a platform, citizen science platform, and then there are unique identification of challenges and mapping of stakeholders, outlining potential action and impact. And then around these challenges, communities form. And these communities, which can primarily local stakeholders, but also national governments can be part of these challenges communities, or also UN programs. And then these different community partners, they specify what they are willing to contribute to addressing this challenge. And then this is this new socio-ecological pact for the future, and with concrete resources and with Web3 technology, blockchain technology, which is used for smart contract and for digital finance and digital assets creation. Then we have a mechanism, the plan for this, for documentation, verification, certification, and attributions of actions and impact, because it's very important if somebody is doing something that it's really trusted information. If it's trusted information, if it's connected with a global information system, then also those who have resources, who benefit from this impact, are ready to pay, to reward the young people or those who are contributing here, their knowledge and their energy and entrepreneurial spirit. And then gamification is also part of this local pacts for the future, because cities can then organize competitions, games, who is more active in identifying challenges, in engaging citizens in implementation of SDGs. So this is the tool which will help to connect the individuals with their challenges, communities, and with the UN system, is an individual SDGs action app. We have a very strong network with digital solution providers from the Web3 world, primarily blockchain, but we have now also the UN Environment Program, the Early Warning and the Data Analytics branch as a partner, and some other players who we bring together to develop these tools. And it was developed in the challenges mapping tool that we have now has been developed in the context of an EU Interreg project. And you can see here some of the functionalities, and we are going to develop this further. And if there are people among you who are knowledgeable about developing such tools, app development, software development, then please reach out to us, because we have also certain financial possibilities and also internship possibilities to work with you on this. And we could also invite you to our festival then in September in Austria. And yeah, so we will have, it's beyond these challenges mapping and local pacts for the future. We are working on this entertainment platform, streaming TV platform, mentioned, we are working on MOU with UNEP. We will hear of their interesting work later. And we are planning also to bring these challenges mapping methodology and as a climate and SDGs learning tool into schools. And we will have our one-day conference and exhibit and entertainment show at the UN headquarters in September, and the festival. And we have also a side event to the UN Science, Technology and Innovation Forum on the 8th of May. Everybody welcome to join us there as well. Here are our contact details. And this is a little bit of an introduction. With this, I give back to Ali. And is Mariam now back? Okay, then.
Do you want to play the video from UNEP?
We have them live here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or shall we ask Alina first to? Yeah. Alina, some perspectives from.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Please. Great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alina Msondan Tombirai Nankamba Karimamsama from Zambia. I am a youth rep at the United Nations for the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development New York. I'm also the founder of an organization called Africa. We are a nonprofit that are equipping Africa's most valuable resource. For us, it is the young people. Africa's population is over 70% youth, and the women. I'm a woman, so naturally, the cause. I am also the founder of a youth-led venture capital initiative called VentureCon Africa, and we are creating accessible funding for young African entrepreneurs, especially working in areas of sustainable development and social enterprise. One of the guiding questions on the agenda that you will see for today's event was, what do young people care about?
Yes.
And I think for me, being a young person, it's natural, and there are so many other young activists that are consistently carrying out the same conversation that I am. It is accessibility, number one. Young people, we care about accessible opportunities. Not just with youth comes a kind of hunger and aggression for better, for more. But we are not just concerned on what opportunity is best for me. It is also what opportunity is accessible for other people coming from a community like me. I have been able to build my enterprises, and with that we build youth hubs in rural and peri-urban communities in Zambia, and we're creating accessible resources for young entrepreneurs. We're creating accessible education opportunities. We're creating accessible skills training for the women, whether you are in school, out of school youth, this is accessible for you. Whether you speak a native language or English, we have over 72 languages in Zambia, but we were colonized by the British, so I speak very good English. It is still very accessible for you. How do I make sure that this platform that I am here with Miro, that Miro has created for me, is accessible for other people? And that also comes with coalition, sharing of resources. I was at Miro's event last September, localization of the SDGs, and there I networked with many young people that share similar values to me, that care about similar things to me. And one of them is Aditi Kapil. She's Indian, she's in Canada, and we're planning to collaborate on so many projects that will help to empower other young people in her community as well as my community. And young people, we care about not just accessibility, but coalitions. When we form coalitions, we're stronger together. We care about localization, not just of the SDGs, but localization also of certain policies that affect private public sector, that affect education, the global conversations. Being here at the United Nations, it's important because I'm advocating about the causes I am passionate about. I'm advocating for the action I implement back in my home country. However, how do we localize this? How is this relevant to the people in the community that don't have access to UN Web TV? because we're all talking about AI and the future and tech, but there are so many people still that don't have access to this. And we're not thinking about that at grassroots level. And another area is resource sharing. What resources are available to me right now? How do I use this to scale? These are the areas that young people care about. This was one point of discussion. I believe Ali would also agree.
100%. That's the whole motive of the thing we do is about engaging young people on the grassroots and bringing their voice into the system with the United Nations and elsewhere, because that is the voice that is missing. And with the platform that we have created, the IYC, with the help of UN Department of Global Communication, UN Habitat, IOM, and IAI, and now UNEP is getting on board, and the UN Immigration is getting on board, because we're trying to create a framework, a mechanism where we can connect with youth on the grassroots. The grassroots youth who do not have the technologies and the privileges that we have, for example, internet and computers, so I can totally resonate what you're saying.
Absolutely.
And if I may add, you are also a very good example of somebody who is working on these topics and having also a living connected with this. And
Yes.
this is the model that we need. It's not that young people, if they come to these conferences, engage in SDGs action, that they are volunteering their life away and spending all own resources, resources of parents and so on, but that there are really mechanisms that recognize the valuable work and potentials of young people and making resources available for this. And this entrepreneurial spirit that you have also is the formula to go. And we are trying to create the enabling ecosystem so that we will bring global resources from people who will be paying voluntary carbon footprint compensation payments, or from who will be ready to pay for creative assets. For instance, the GloCha streaming TV platform that we're building is people will pay, there will be revenues from subscription, but also from advertisement, and those who will submit these citizen-focused or youth-focused stories, user-generated content, they will be paid through the platform. And with these digital innovation tools that are now available, Web3 technology, tokenization, and so it's possible really to channel the money then from the global level to the local level. And that's one thing that we would like to do. And we are very happy that you are here today, and that the NGO Committee for Sustainable Development New York, who has nominated you as their representative, is a partner of our event. And that's really great.
You've spoken about something.
Sorry, I have the access here, so you don't have to go.
Okay, okay. We will then bring in Alex and his colleagues. But is Mariam here? No. Okay, because
You spoke about resources and being able as a young person to not just be used for volunteerism, but actually turn this into a profitable social enterprise.
Yes.
And I agree. I am actively contributing to the entrepreneur eco-cycle in Zambia, in Africa. And right now, all of my employees at whether it is my spa in Zambia, my franchise location in Namibia, which I was able to open in 2019, before I was even 21, or the other locations of my businesses around the African continent, all of my employees are young people. All of my employees are young people. All of my suppliers, because again, I'm a woman, most of them are women. And it's really important to recognize young people's value. When I walk into a room, when I'm meeting investors, when I am pitching, for the longest time, I had people that were trying to manage me and say, we have to advertise you and position you as she's the youngest entrepreneur in Zambia doing this. And I didn't sign up for that because I'm growing older. I'm sorry, I'm not growing backwards. I'm growing older, and you need to see my value regardless of age, sex, gender, whatever that you identify as. It's your value needs to be recognized as what you bring to the table. So I recognize, I say, you will introduce me as an entrepreneur. And this is the value I bring. So even when it is organizations like NGO Committee on Sustainable Development, we see young people as stakeholders. You're a stakeholder, you're not just a beneficiary. My organization, we impact the lives of so many young people, right? And we've been doing this for years. And it's not, we don't count it as a number to meet funders or take to government and say, look at these numbers. They're people, their lives. You are a stakeholder, recognize me as a stakeholder, recognize the value of young people, that we can help influence policy, it affects us too. And also it's very important to have those intergenerational conversations. Young people, we have a lot of fire and we see things, how they're working now. We see the solutions to modern problems. And sometimes we're too quick to want to act on that without reflecting on why has this thing been done this way for so long? What is the value and the benefit? And that's why you have that intergenerational conversation and cycle and exchange of resources, information.
Bravo, thank you. Ali, can we bring in now UNEP colleagues from
Alex and Keegan?
Yeah, and Candice, both three. Because it's also an intergenerational partnership, and they are big innovators for the UN system with a big vision. And so let's switch also the screen so that you will see and hear them.
Hello, Miro.
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, greetings from Nairobi in Africa, and in Kenya. It's great to have just witnessed Alina speaking on behalf of a doer on a youth doer and transformative action, and before that yourself, Miro, and Ali from the International Youth Center. First, congrats, because I think if there's a decision to be made about the existence of a youth summit of the future, the decision would have been to consider the youth summit of the future, the main summit of the future, and the other one to be complementary, because there's no future without the youth action. And basically that needs to be recognized. I'll be very brief because I want to give the floor to my colleagues, young leaders. Igang Lee will demonstrate how we are using environmental geospatial science through youth involvement and through the youth action on the ground, as well as the funding mechanisms, the call for action on a billboard in our geospatial initiatives for the environment. And then I give the floor to Candice Jung, that will, she was already presenting some elements of early warning and data analytics on the environment. And she will move forward demonstrating that. But particular topic, because I heard that already from Alina, the use of localization services for the SDGs, as well as innovative financing. Just one word. I'm a true believer that we need to bring the youth for key decision leadership action in the UN system and beyond, and that will be the transformative change that we need. So without further ado, I'll give you the floor, Igang, for you. We know we have only 3.5 minutes for each one of you, but in 7 minutes, beautiful 7 number, we will demonstrate how youth can be transformative on early action and early warning, foresight, and the environment. Over to you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, colleagues. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Alex and the chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Egon. Today, I will be presenting one of our pipeline work streams, environmental geospatial science, and its youth-powered mechanism aimed at transforming people, places, and planet. Environmental geospatial science combines environmental science, geography, and geospatial technology to analyze Earth's environment using GIS, remote sensing, and spatial analysis for studying processes like biodiversity, climate change, and pollution. The rationale for introducing this workstream at the Youth Forum is rooted in the crucial instrumental value of environmental geospatial science. It offers a platform for youth involvement, leadership, education, and empowerment. I will approach this topic from 3 perspectives: institutional, ground action, and funding mechanism, illustrated through the demonstration of 3 projects. So start with the institutional level. The demo project is the One Map initiative. The One Map initiative centralized over 1,000 rich data layers from 40+ UN agencies, offering easy access to real-time observational data, thematic analytics, and integrated early warning systems. In this initiative, integrating youth group is one of the major goals, including youth-led projects being coordinated across UN agencies, a UN-level media release, youth funding program, etc., etc. With 40 plus UN agents acting as one, we share the common ground that the importance of promoting the youth group in the UN task force. We initiated a job profile for young geospatial professions in the UN system, ensuring systematic quality control to support and nurture future leaders. Beside the job openings, the emphasis is on launching personalized mentorship to empower youth strategically, preparing them for future leadership roles. So the key message for this chapter is connected youth with a broader UN network rather than limiting opportunities to just the one agency, offering mentorship for launching their careers with the UN system. Coming to the second ground action chapter, we demonstrate how youth use the environmental geospatial situation room project to accelerate SDG achievements. The environmental geospatial situation room is a sub-hub within the UN geospatial situation room. Marketing Green functions as an information hub with a digital platform and a physical facility to keep the local environment under review. It generates and shares early warning and solution scenarios for environmental hazards. It will offer facilities, closed service connectivity, establishing a solid foundation for the local youth to utilize at the data entrepreneurship hub, workstation, and education center. To sustain youth-led collective intelligence beyond the funded peer area, we have integrated a decentralized autonomous organization framework into the implementation architecture, distributing decision-making, management, and entity ownership. So the structure integrates DAO, ensuring youth committee ownership and distributed decision-making, marketing, right? Each local situation eventually establish its own resilient data ecosystem with input from the local youth. So the key message for ground action is empower the youth community with ownership and decentralized decision-making to cultivate a self-sustaining data supply ecosystem. In the third part, accessible funding mechanism is essential for any project. And the call for action billboard is a key feature within the One Map platform we are creating for the youth community. The call for action billboard invites project proposals using the One Map's hotspots layer, which you see on the screen, to identify areas needing environmental intervention. It provides location, SIM, and funding details. Local youth groups can partner with international consultants to compete for projects. This outlines the funding flow mechanism for the call for action billboard, with the youth group highlighted in green. 3 funding channels have been established to strategically position the youth group. One is through UN Geospatial Network, one is through selected partner agency, and one is from the donor directly. So selected youth group will receive 100K to 200K per project from the donor for initiatives in disaster risk and conflict areas, with in-kind contribution like free facility and university lab support. The aim is to collaborate on 100 projects involving 100 youth groups across 100 countries. To sum up, 3 key messages focus on promoting youth engagement at institutional levels, ground action, and funding mechanisms, completing the project-wise youth engagement plan. Thank you.
Brilliant, and I hand over immediately to you. Fantastic, thank you, Higang, for demonstrating how we have the youth embedded from ground to earth on all the project. And over to you, Candice, on how you using how youth is being instrumental for the project you're implementing.
Yeah, thank you, Alex and Higang. So hi everyone, I'm Candice, a GIS associate from the Early Warning and Assessment Division of UNEP. So Higang has presented on the existing UN system, and so I'm now trying to present in a much wider perspective and also with some personal sentiment and on how we, the young people, care about and also how to harness this youth power. So I'm trying to play my video, and please let me know if it's showing. Yeah.
We're having some problems on hearing you, Candice. If you can be closer to the microphone, or probably increasing.
Okay. Is this working now? Is this volume okay? Testing.
It's playing now. It's on the screen. You must start.
Okay. So as an environmental scientist, I care about the environment like all other young people today. So we have inherited the unprecedented environmental problems, yet we are the last generation to solve it. So we are concerned about the rising sea levels that would flood our homes, as well as the decision makers who still cling to their existing beliefs and which would lead us to a doomed future. So after Higang presenting on the existing systems, I'm trying to present it from a much wider perspective. And there are two ways of harnessing youth power today that we already have for SDG implementation. And the first one is, I think we need to support young people with technological awareness, including startup entrepreneurs in exploring technical solutions boldly with more technical support, mentorship, and incentives. While multilateral development banks are undergoing reforms, which would take time. So could we buy time and encourage innovative young people more strongly to explore sustainable financing strategies first at local levels, say by using blockchain and distributed ledger-based systems in AI-driven investment platforms and personalized crowdfunding campaigns that could then be upscaled if successful. Knowledge and data are increasing at an accelerating rate. We need to harness the mental flexibility and technological acumen of young people to rethink about whether we have been collecting the right data all these years that help decision making, and how to analyze climate-related data sets like satellite image with AI much quicker. And for data monitoring, could we deploy blockchain in a more widespread way to allow fully transparent tracking and tracing of carbon emission data, for example, along the supply chain of items we use to hold stakeholders accountable? Second, we need
Candice, could you perhaps check the
actively
connection of your microphone? It's breaking up. Sorry.
Testing. If it's
Yeah. I think it's better now.
Okay. Let me try continuing on the second point. So we need to set up actively open-minded decision-making processes at all levels and allow young people to speak up. Youth-led groups have to be empowered at local and global levels to shatter echo chambers and make sure our generation's perspectives are prioritized to support decisions beyond political cycles. This includes our views on the likelihoods, impacts, exposure, consequences of negative events, which would lead to a different risk calculation if only views of existing decision makers are valued. Besides, it is easier for youth-led groups to harness the influence of young digital content creators on social media, but we have to recognize who can then collect opinions of a much wider range of audience and feed them back to the decision-making process. For example, who are watching videos of ways to make the world a better place, but not attending today's side event. As such, we need to mobilize more countries and local authorities to establish youth councils and advisory groups, and we need a louder voice of children and youth major group in the UN system. We also have to ensure this is done justly, that the eligibility to participate would not exclude people with non-selected voices. Young people have a lot of skills and solutions to offer, and we have to recognize that. We need concrete examples to make decision makers realize that they need the new way of thinking and working of young people to succeed, and we just may not have the opportunity to discuss this again in the next annual conference. Thank you.
Over to you, Mira.
Ali, will you? Or shall I? As you wish.
So colleagues in thank you so much from the colleagues in Nairobi from UNAP. That was a very, very, very interesting and very informative presentation, especially Alex. I would love to connect more on what you just presented and your colleagues about youth engagement and how you can get engaged into the process that you're doing. And I think we are all on the same page when we're talking about having young people's voice engaged into the decision-making processes at all levels, and that is why that we came up with the idea of an Informal Youth Summit of the Future, and we would love to remove the word informal and have it the Youth Summit of the Future, but the thing is that we have to do it, and we have to do it anyhow, so we just include the word informal, so know that it's a collaboration of the civil society organizations and the UN departments and UN organizations and some of the member states and youth in general that coming together to put the Informal Youth Summit of the Future, and where we will be having all sorts of discussion and trying to bring all sectors of young people into this discussion. So so we can totally resonate with that. You want to say something?
Yes, I would just like, it would be good then if we have interaction, also hearing from participants, their ideas about an Informal Youth Summit of the Future and Local Pacts for the Future. Then we have Doug with a leader in youth engagement and the Declare Action, great pioneering idea also. But I wanted just to mention in relation to the presentations that we've heard from UNEP, the early warning and data analytics branch, that for young people to be more powerful with their voice, it's good to back up your interest, your caring, and so with data. And this data that the UNEP early warning and data analytics branch has, and the World Environment Situation Group, this is wonderful data. This is such a wealth of information that can really help you to get much better proposals and much better products and services if you develop them, and if you go to your city council or whoever you are trying to reach with this data, with visuals from this platform, and this is then helping you a lot. And for us, it's as we are aiming for this partnership with UNEP, is regarding the challenges mapping and the local pacts for the future. If we have challenges identified and we have it backed up with information from the early warning and data analytics branch of UNEP, it's much more concrete, and we have already more insights about what the real context is and how it will develop in the future. And then once we have more solid challenges, we can then build action on it and have also more financial resources from public authorities, from philanthropic sources, and so channel to this because it's data-based, because people love data, and if you want to document any impact, you need data, and there are tools already there that we will help you to connect with, and Doug will help there as well. Doug, would you like to say something about your work and DECLA actions and the importance of citizen science, perhaps briefly?
Sure.
Sorry for taking.
Yeah, thank you so much, and apologies for being late. I got caught in the bowels of the UN system.
For the combo.
So, I mean, I guess what UN Habitat, and then we partner very closely with UNEP and with Alex Caldas and with his the people there. We recognized 2 or 3 years ago that this Summit of the Future would be quite critical. Two reasons. A, it's quite critical. I mean, we're really we're in a lot of trouble right now, and we knew climate change was coming. We didn't realize war and so on was there as well, and so we're quite down the road. So we knew that this would be a critical time as well, because we're just a few years out of the 2030 and where we're supposed to achieve the SDGs. Last year at the SDG Summit, which was the General Assembly focus last year, we saw many very stark data about how we're just not reaching the SDGs, and this is really critical. And I think the narrative as we're rolling forward, well, who do we turn to? So I mean, I would, as UN Habitat and UNEP are the 2 UN agencies headquartered in the Global South, the only 2 UN agencies headquartered in the Global South. Every other UN agency is either Geneva, Paris, New York. We are there. Reality, I can drive or walk if I wanted to for 10 minutes and be in an informal settlement, such as if you were there yesterday in Mathari, where the vast majority of people have no housing, have very little access to education, any basic services like water, sanitation, and make approximately under $5 or $10 a day. So it's a reality that we as UN agencies there live, and we know that what we knew and what we know when we're looking at the demographics is that the Global South is predominantly young and in some cases growing younger. For example, in Africa, where we're working, where there's a billion plus people, the average age in Africa is 70% of the population is under the age of 30. So take that compared to here, where 20% or so is probably, maybe looking at 10, 20%. It's quite small. If you're not engaging that population, you're not doing anything. It's similar to the argument that can be made about women. If you don't engage 50% of the population, then you're going nowhere as well. So we very much knew that this Summit of the Future could have possible crises coming up, but we also knew that there was huge opportunities in terms of engaging young people, and that's why this Summit of the Future is about the future. It is about how young people can be involved. So what we began to create, we have a biannual conference called the World Urban Forum in UN Habitat, is what we're calling declarations. So not just a declaration, which is just a paper-based thing which we all sign and we go home and do whatever we do when we get home, but actually we commit to action. So that was the initial declaration for us, was adopted at our last World Urban Forum in Katowice, Poland, again, in a place that is right on the doorstep of war. And that was a commitment. And then we started hearing about what's going to happen this year, which is this Pact for the Future, the local Pact for the Future, which the first person that told me about that was Miro. He's like, there's this local Pact for the Future idea. And I'm like, this is great. This is something that we really look towards. And so that's where we started looking at how to make this happen, and really how we can build into this with the Summit of the Future and what we're looking at. So the next year is critical for the world, but as well for young people. What also fits in then is why our partnership with, I again work with UN Habitat, but do some work with UNEP, is the issue of data. Young people, so we're no longer sitting here talking just about young people should participate. Okay, let's assume. Okay, we're really honestly, we've talked about this for 20 years. We're here. You participate, but how? What are you going to do? What are you bringing to the table? You need data. Policy is driven by data. So that means everything from you walking out the door and I see something and I'm like, okay, I'm going to report on what I see. That's data. It's qualitative. It's valuable. But then you need hard data. You need data that's done over a time period and so on. And that's where a lot of working with where the amazing stuff that Alex was talking about in terms of how we're going to start collecting that, what platforms are we going to use so that we can report on it and so on. So we've looked at participatory processes. We're looking at an SDG scorecard where young people can score the work they do. Another piece that we're really critical of, that is kind of core to our work, and this is, we have this kind of saying, that youth are not only leaders of tomorrow, they're leaders of today. So that means you're doing leadership now. We don't have to, I mean, we will, as a society, because young people grow and such, you know, we will support young people to grow into leadership and educate them and so on. But we're at such a level of crisis that you need the Greta Thunbergs of the world to step up. I don't know, I'm not going to say whether it's ethical that we're depending on a 13-year-old at the time to basically tell the world, pardon the French, to go to hell. We're not going to, I'm not going to defend that, but that's the reality we're in. So we have you guys are leaders now. So that means you take on the responsibility of being a leader. And what do you need to do? Well, you need to look at both practice. What are you doing? And we get that quite well in the I'm Canadian, the North American or European context where we should reduce, recycle, reuse. We have all these kind of things. And that's really important. But it's not just that. It's the systemic changes that need to happen. Whether it's, we're talking, I mean, systemic usually lined up with racism, sexism, yes. But there's all those just the systemic way that we consume. And how do we change that? But without the data, without the ability to go to a policymaker, all you're doing is arguing that you should participate. And I've been there. We called it well, there's a few things because I've done a lot of youth work over many years. Of course, I'm no longer youth. You know, what we call oftentimes in the urban planning world, because I work with cities, was pizza box engagement. The youngest urban planner, they said, okay, we're going to change this area here. So we're going to change the area around the UN. And they say, okay, we need to find out what young people think. Oh, well, young people is important thing. So we're going to get young people. They come up with 10 pizzas. They put them down. They do a flip chart. They pass around those surveys and everyone says whatever. It's usually the youngest, most junior planner. Pizza's consumed. They put it all together. They roll it up, go home, and you never see it again. Pizza boxing. Not meeting. Not real. But and I think I could guess that a lot of you have had that kind of frustration. And you can get angry and say, we have the right to participate. Great. But then you got to come with something. And what you can come with is data. I mean, you can gather. So the platform that Alex is putting forward, the concept of the one map. So, am I going on too long?
Yes, we would have.
So the concept of the big thing that's changed in the world over the last 15 years or so is your cell phone. Your cell phone is driven by geospatial data. Every app you have, vast majority of them, 90% are geospatially driven. So that's not complicated. I mean, I work with young people who live in Mathari, may not have a high school education, but they know how to use a cell phone. So suddenly so if you're gathering data, whether you want to or not, that's another piece. But whether you want to or not, you're gathering data. What if you had the mind to gather that data? Like you consciously gather that data. That's where it fits in with this one map. So I don't know if Alex went into this in more detail, but one map, the initial thing is just to get the world to agree to a geospatial map. This is quite complicated. Look at Ukraine. Is Ukraine all Russian? Is there Ukraine all Ukrainian? I mean, it depends who you talk to. Look at North Korea, South Korea, look at many of the places of the world. There's many contested borders, but there's an agreement on how to deal with that. So this one map, when adopted, will be the first time ever, and this is shocking, the first time ever that the whole UN system, which is 193 countries of the world and other sub-countries and other groups, 193 countries of the world agree on one map. That's great. But then the question is, we got the one map, but what about the maps under that make up that one map? So then there's also a regional level map. Then there's also a municipal or local government level map. So those are also data. And again, if you have a platform and agree to that platform, and then everyone is able to input into that platform, suddenly you're legitimate. The part that I find interested in, that I'm working closely with Alex, is community-driven data. So, and this is where citizen science comes in, and that's where actually UNEP is a leading thing, because we've all heard of bird counts. So we went out and counted the birds. I mean, I come from Vancouver. There were bald eagles. Bald eagles, big thing. They're beautiful birds. So every year, lots of people, usually kids, high school kids, whatever, go out and count the eagles. So that is citizen science. And what they do it over a time period. So you had eagles in year 1, eagles in year 2, and so on. And then they match other science and knowledge. So, well, there's a huge drop in how many eagles there are. What happened? You know, it could be many different things. It could be El Nino and so on. So that citizen science then plugs into something very concrete. But what about mapping poverty? What about mapping gender discrimination on a geospatial level? All these kinds of things. So suddenly, if you guys could map data and get information and use it, because I also believe in youth organizations and so on, but use that data. But you can also plug into a global system that goes all the way up and down. So you plug into the one map, but at the community-driven, community-led data level, suddenly you have power. And what comes from that is the ability to go to city council and say, well, not only do we know there's violence against women, not only do we know racism is happening, but we can tell you exactly where it's happening. And oh, by the way, we're gathering the data, and we're going to do it over once every year for the next 5 years. And we can show you what's happening, going up, going down, and then we can start projecting why, and then you create policy. That's the most important part. So it's keep doing all the good work you're doing. Absolutely, you have to be active. But you also need to gather data about it. Because if not, then the question of, are you participating? The question they can justifiably push back and say, well, how? What are you coming? What's new that you're bringing to my table? And you can say, well, I have this. My data is equal to your planner data is equal to anyone else's. So that's the exciting part. That was a long narrative. Hopefully it was not too much of a rant. But that's where I think the exciting part of what UNEP is doing, the exciting part about citizen science, and the exciting part of what we're doing.
Now let's hear.
So we'll open the floor for all of you for questions, comments on anything you want to ask. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. That was very insightful. My name is Isadora. I'm an artist and public policy. Sorry, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna try to. And I'm a public policy researcher for the Ministry of Human Rights in Brazil. First and foremost, thank you for opening the floor. A lot of times during this conference, people are talking to youth and not with youth. Since it's very redundant subject here. But talking about data, I agree with you. I don't think it's only about data itself, but who's collecting it, how it's being collected. And you said about youth being involved in the after process, not only during the data collection process. A lot of times they collect the data, they engage us, and then we have to leave the room for them to make the final decisions. So one way that I found to come across this is using art, not only because not all youth is involved in local initiatives, but also not all youth is able to understand data. Like you said, cell phones are easy to use. We understand to some extent, but how about people who don't? In bridging also intergenerations, for instance, us and our grandparents don't know how to use the phone. So how can we speak that data to them? So I came to this because you mentioned art, and I was really interested in ways that we can create that. I'm developing an art exhibit right now called Text Me When You Get Home. I'm sure every woman in this room knows what it means. And it's a data-driven art exhibit to show the lack of women's mobility around the world in terms of safety and security and all of that. So I have, after all of this, I wanted to impose a question. So after the process of collecting data, how are we better able to engage in policy development with folks in local communities who are not able to fully understand data? What are some alternatives that you have found in the past to involve that? And that's also for you who is an entrepreneur and a woman and works of initiatives in Africa. So I'd love to hear more on ways to bridge that gap with folks who are not in this room, because let's be honest, whoever came to this conference is able to afford it or got sponsorship, but the majority of folks from the global south are not able to afford it. So how can we bridge that gap through data and through other art initiatives, if you have any examples?
We do.
Love to hear more.
We do.
You can answer.
I authorize you to answer.
What?
You can answer that.
Of course. See, I'm part of IYC, International Youth Conference. He's my boss. And I always tell everybody that because he's my leader. I'm going to respect him as my leader. Yesterday, I was with the European nation, and they were very specific about how they want to engage with their youth, and they described the process. And I was listening to their process. It's a very arduous process, very expensive process. And then after they spoke, I confronted them. If you're speaking on behalf of the youth, the vulnerable, the poor, the hungry, your arduous process just knocked everybody out.
Yeah.
How can you, in this room, in the European nation, talk about how you want to advocate for our youth when you create these pathways that cannot be touched by anyone that's below a certain financial process? So it's very clear.
That was the argument there, the European Union. I was there. It's because we are very much high in engaging young people at the grassroots, bringing their voice to the mainstream here at the UN with the help of UN Habitat, IAI, and UNDGC. And I was shocked to see that argument. They say that the solution is that just exclude them.
No one's excluding. They weren't excluding. They
There-
said
there's
we're
no
open,
way.
but here's the
There's no
process.
There is
So,
no way.
Right.
So when you're saying that there is a no way, it means that you're saying that, okay, let's exclude it.
Right.
Because there are solutions and we are actually working on the solution. And the solution is not going forward. I mean, we literally get connect with the youth when we stream International Youth Conference, we stream live on internet and we reach people out who do not have internet. How? With the help of radio signals.
They were radio.
Because they have radios over there.
Yes.
And we were able to work. We went back in time and we worked with the radio signals to have the conference stream, and we have the community leaders who work with us who were translating the conference to them, the conversations that we were having at the International Youth Conference into their local language. And we have the example of the Czech Republic and the Democratic Republic of Congo, that this happened in two places at the same time because we work together. And now we are growing on the idea of reaching them out in the way that they want to be reached out, not in a way that I want to reach them out.
Mhm.
It's about how they want to hear from us. Because if we go with that approach that English is the only language, the internet is only the communication way, that's not going to work because it has not. And I was talking about, the data that how many people don't know about SDGs. We're talking about the one in Global South. I can give you my real-time example. When I was in Los Angeles promoting IYC 9 1 month ago, I visited 3 universities, reached out almost 500 students, and I was there in the classrooms with the graduate students, and I asked the
Undergrad.
question about how many people know about the SDGs. Out of 500 people, only one person knew what SDGs are. And I'm talking about the students who are the graduate level students who are doing their masters in the social work or social welfare. So this is a moment of concern that the SDGs are known or we are here. So this is the data that we have. And we are literally now working on the situation with that. We are working on the local communication ways, like how we can communicate with them in a local way. Like they want to hear internet is not the only way. And if you were there yesterday at the plenary that we organized, and there was a Hello Kitty video over there, and that video was really, really good and engaging because there was ways like how the urban development was taking place in Nairobi with the help of the local people there. So these are some ways that we can use the data that we have. This is the problem, and the solution is also with the people. This is my opinion. I don't know what Doug want to say about that, but Margot?
Yeah, so hi. So I'm Margo Winsor, President and Chair of the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development and convener of the Urban Cluster, which is associated with the NGO Major Group for the High Level Political Forum. And we're very proud of what Alina has brought to our organization as a youth rep for us because of how dedicated she is to working with youth, empowering them, employing them, and keeping them focused in Africa and elsewhere, and also, of course, in our own country, Zambia. But I want to say the problem about having one person in 500, the only one knowing about the SDGs is our fault too.
Yes,
It's the UN's fault,
it is.
has been for a long time, and all of us who know about it. If you're passionate about it, talk about it, get it done, get out there and make a difference. The SDGs were designed to really empower and include everyone. We have to do the same. That's what I wanted to say. We have to do our part. Thank you. Like Aline is. And Miro.
And
All of you.
can I add to what she said, just to follow with what Ali said? Localization and translating it into a language that is understood by people at grassroots level is really important. Data is our best friend, but not everybody knows that, right? And you can't use the people at grassroots in the communities to collect your data and then it not work for them also. During COVID, my organization, we took on the role of working with World Health Organization and Ministry of Health. My country has over 72 official languages. Do you know that the important messages on what is the virus? How does it prevent? I come from Zambia. Majority we're Black people. You don't have to say African American, and we're focusing on the majority look like me. And when it first hit, there was this thing of, oh, I'm not worried about COVID. This is white people problem. Do you understand it? Melanin, I'm not affected. And I lost aunties, I lost cousins, I lost friends, I lost people in the community that have benefited from empowerment programs that we implement. We lost so many because they didn't understand how the virus is working, what it does. It was take a lemon, listen. We had to translate all the messages, all the information that was coming in from World Health Organization and Ministry of Health into 72 local languages so that it reaches the people that do not have access to internet, that did not have access to exposure and education on the melanin. You don't even know what the word melanin is, just the blackness. It will not protect you from this virus. And that's one way that you can use data to benefit everybody. And when you're working with young people, you have to include them at every level. It's not just at data collection level. It's not just at help us to identify what is a good social media strategy. It's not just whatever the buzzwords are. Oh, we need to use you to talk about this buzzword. It's you need to include young people at every level. That would be the best approach for me.
First you, then you, and then you. Please go ahead.
Hello. So my name is Zachary Gu. I'm an international relations student from Canada. First of all, thank you for talking with us and sharing this with us. I'm excited to actually be in one of the smaller spaces today where we can actually have those conversations, which kind of leads me to my first point. I had one suggestion to bring it back to the informal Summit of Youth Summit of the Future conversation. I have one suggestion for that, and then I also have a question about the data collection. So for the suggestion, there's been like a repeated perspective I've heard, especially in between the sessions at the forum, when talking with people about, oh, how did you think the forum went? And the thing I keep hearing is that it's a lot of repeated statements or like reaffirming the commitments to involving youth. And I think that's, you made a very good point when you were like, we're all on the same page about that. It's what are we actually going to do about it? And so in those conversations, one thing that has been brought up a lot is we at the forum, one of the most important tools that I think is being underutilized is the fact that people who are here are often here, one, because we are able to, whether through funding or our own means, and very thankful and privileged for that, but also because we're doing important work in our own communities. And I think it's important that we're using this forum to be able to just share our own stories, because then you can inspire others to be able to be like, oh, I have a similar issue in my community, hence the global goals, the global issues, and I have the expertise in my own community to make the changes to your project that would affect my community better. And so I think at this forum, there should be a lot, or at the Summit of the Future, there should be a lot more spaces for youth to share their own stories to inspire the other youth rather than just restating the same messages, because then you can actually build those collaborations and you meet the people and you say, oh, I want to hear more about that so I can implement it in my own community. So that's my suggestion for the conference. It's just more spaces like that and time for that. As far as my question, it is about, again, the data collection with the map. How would you plan to, with all of that data coming in on such a large scale, what kind of systems or plans are there in place to be able to manage all that and make sure that it's like verified and trusted? It was talked about at the start about verifying and making sure that the information we're getting through the app and stuff is something that we can trust and utilize. With all of that information coming in from so many different sources at all times, over such a large scale, how would that be able to be like realistically managed in a way that could ensure young people or people, anyone utilizing that data can actually feel like they can trust it?
I'll take 2 more questions and we'll answer together.
Okay, so thank you very much for this informal word is something that has brought me here today. I'm Dr. Neelam Bharadwaj. I've worked for 20 years with the United Nations in various capacities as a medical doctor, saving mothers, women's life all over the world, in Africa. And of course, I'm an Indian, but I didn't live in India for 20 years. I live in New York, so I have the opportunity of attending these sessions. So I think this is the most beautiful thing that we are discussing here, and a lot of good things happen in the side events and not on the main plenary, that we want to go and sit there, but we don't get much out of that. But as I think a lot of things have already been discussed here, but what I want to say here and why I'm here is because I'm also a founder and managing director of a non-profit back home in India, which is 24 years old. And this is constituted of all the girls of polio, spinal cord injuries, and very, very poor girls from rural India. So these are the most neglected population, and nobody talks to them. They have no voice within their own country, within their own families also. So forget about having a voice here. So I came here to hear, when youth really grow and make these big plans, where will this small voiceless community figure out how will their voice also come on the table? So I am taking you guys much behind about even what we are thinking here. Like, forget about knowing what SDGs. It doesn't matter if people don't know what SDGs, but if people don't even know their existence, or in 21st century, if a girl doesn't have a wheelchair and she's still crawling on the floor, what does it mean to us? How does a youth look at that other girl in other part of the world? So I came here just to open a new window of discussion. And I know this is not the forum to take it further, but this is just a point to be noted that what we are discussing is that the voices of youth have to be heard here. And they can't work without us. And I just first you empower your own children at home. You see how much you empower them. And then you empower children who are working around you. So all those people like us, I mean, I don't consider myself old. I mean, I'm quite old as far as the retirement of UN is concerned. But I still feel I'm very young because I'm working a lot with all the young people. So this is a beautiful forum, and these are the kind of discussions that should happen more often so that young people have the voice in New York and then globally everywhere. Where do they come from? So thank you. That's my only contribution.
I'd like to, first of all, my name is Nada Muhammad. I am a climate justice advocate, and I also happen to be a public policy researcher, but in a private firm. Thank you so much for this insightful conversation. I had 2 questions regarding the Informal Summit in the future. So the first thing would be, you said that you will be collaborating with the CSOs. And here, there is kind of an area of exclusion because I come from Egypt. And unfortunately, the issue of registration for civil society organizations is truly hard. Like, I wanted to participate in the summit that will be happening in Nairobi, but unfortunately, I either happen to be in one of the regional or local organizations, or international organizations who only have 3 slots for each organization, which is crazy. Or I happen to be in one of the local organizations that I work diligently on helping girls being educated and penetrating green skills. However, unfortunately, I happen to be not registered due to the bureaucracy and red tape. So I was wondering if you're considering something like that in the organization itself. Another aspect I wanted to ask about is the timing. Is it going to be happening simultaneously with the Summit of the Future? Because I think if it happened at an earlier stage, it would be more beneficial, because at the end of the day, if it happens simultaneously, how would this kind of informal knowledge be fed into the outcomes? Because at the end of the day, informal or not, if it's substantiated by powerful data across different regions, it would be more effective.
So I will answer the 2 questions here, both related to the Informal Youth Summit of the Future, because first of all, the dates, we're debating on the dates because it's coincide like with the 10th edition of the International Youth Conference, which we converted into the Informal Youth Summit of the Future. And we usually have it at the high level week, so we can make an impact. But definitely, we're not going to do simultaneously with the Summit of the Future because we want to be there. We want to raise voice, we want to object, and we want to hold people accountable as well when we are there. So this is will happen either right after the Summit of the Future during the high level week, that is either 25th to 26th or 27th of the September, or a few days before the Summit of the Future. We are deciding on the dates. We are debating with the partners because UN Habitat is one of the partner, the IAI, and IOM, and now UNEP is also on board in our control stream of the partners. And yes, the civil society organizations can totally be part of it because it's all, we calling it informal because we are pretty much open to do whatever we want. And we are with the civil society organizations out there, the UN agencies are helping us, some of the I would say the member states, but largely is the youth. Like you people gonna do that. It's not me or all of us gonna do that. It will be planned with your input. You will all be part of the active input if you want to be part of the planning team. Doors are open. We have your email addresses. We will definitely reach out in a week's time, like if you want to be part of this team. And another question he asked like about the format, if we should make it more engaging. Yes, it's more engaging. Our priority to have you the speakers there. Not it's the mix of intergenerational, but the 70% of the speakers are young people or will be young people. So we want to hear from you more about what they think, what is going on. We definitely will have an outcome document that will be the local pact of the future that Miro mentioned. So we are planning a lot of exciting things around it. We're getting a lot of support around this idea, and we can connect later after this event, talk more about how you can get involved with the youth summit that we're planning. For the data question, I would direct more to Doug, and if Alex wanna answer on.
Doug, do you want to come in?
Yeah, Alex, why don't you come in?
Fantastic questions. Let me pick two of them because they were related about data collection at such large scale. And the answer to that is the use, the problem is not in the use of the available technology. We do have powerful combination of big data together with the cloud, together with artificial intelligence and blockchain. One is today able to process large amounts of data and to traverse, of course, geospatial, I'm talking about geolocated data, and traverse that from the global level to the very local level. So the problem is not in the technology, is in the capacity building, as was mentioned by another question, at the very local level of the community level, and how to harness the power of this technology to make it happen. But I'm not sure if I'm able to share the screen because Doug mentioned how we can use a one-based map to represent all of these, and how using authoritative data, which means that's the quality data, verified data sources, to make it and put it together. So the answer is the use of available technology with capacity building and with authoritative sources of data. I'm not sure if I'm able to present the screen, but this gives an idea of, in terms of the, I don't think so. In terms of the one map, we are building together, using the, I think you can see my screen, using the powerful of these distributed geospatial data with the one map. IOM together with UNHCR is putting together migration data on real time, so we can understand how people are migrating at a very local level all over the world, from one place of our world to the other. So that's the answer for that question on the big data. Let me go on the question on capacity at the local level, and Doug represented that very well. If we want to harness the power at the level of community, let's say Matare, let's say Kibera, let's say any community based on Naivasha, Lake Naivasha, we can train youth and local citizens to participate in high quality data management. And that's what we did in 5 countries in Africa for the analysis of the quality of the water. And this was done in river basins in Sierra Leone, as it was done in Kenya and in some river basins as well. So the answer is an optimistic answer. If we involve properly youth and local communities, we can do it with verified quality data. I'm not sure if I was able to answer the questions, not all of them, but at least to give a positive sentiment that we are doing that and it's possible, and it has great results. Yes.
Thanks, Alex. I mean, I think that kind of really encapsulates where we're going. I think that, so to kind of give you my background, I worked for an civil society NGO for 18 years. Then I got involved in the UN system. And one thing just to note, I don't think it really is of any value for us to bash each other. The UN's wrong because you're all just a bunch of formal people sitting around stuffed shirts. No, the UN is your national government, oftentimes elected. I mean, they're your elected. If you have another system and go talk to many of the people around who can talk about dictatorships and stuff like that, I mean, you kind of you go with what you got. I mean, so the UN is massively imperfect, but it's the best that you can do, and I think it's worth. And then NGOs. I went from an NGO sector, which is quite informal. Why I moved into the UN system is because you can only go so far as an NGO. You can't globally you're not elected. You can advocate and you can do certain things. So just to say, I'm not saying you have to stay in your own lane, but at least recognize that. So it just doesn't do us any good to basically try to tear down the other side, in my opinion. But some people might do so. But in terms of, I want to come back to your initial question about how to get to, how to represent data to people who may not understand what data is. First thing, let us not make data this mysterious thing. It's just numbers. It's data is anything. I'm like, oh, that's a really nice jacket. That's data. What color the jacket is data. Don't let people make this mysterious. Because I can guarantee you, I am doing my PhD, I can guarantee you that the way I collect data and the way I represent data has about 50 steps of, oh, well, let's not do it this way. Why? Well, because I don't think that's the way I think. I'm an older white guy and I have that perspective, so that'll bias my data. Your data is biased as well. If you're a young woman from this country or whatever, data bias is built in. Everyone has it. There is no one data. So don't be cow. Don't be, don't be like, oh my God, I don't have my data not of any value. That's not true. But when you go into local communities, sometimes, I'll use COVID in Mathari because Mathari COVID was used as an example by the other woman here. The biggest issue when you're in a place like Mathari or the vast majority of the world is literacy and numeracy. People just don't have it. I mean, it's not their fault. That's just the way it is. So when we were doing COVID stuff and the explanation of how you get that data, so we had data. We knew COVID was happening. We knew why it was happening. There was arguments whether you should wear a mask or whether you should wash your hands. I mean, there was lots of changes. As the data came in, we course corrected. But one of the things we noted, it was that, again, there was so little information, public health information being put out. We're like, well, how can we do this? And this comes to the art part. So we said murals. Murals are a best way. You can get thousands of people watching it. So we worked with the graffiti artists in many informal settlements, both in Kenya, we worked in Somalia, we worked in Ecuador. We had an absolutely amazing mural. And we did these murals that had everything. They had a woman who was a nurse. That was a really important thing. We had people on masks. We had a whole range of stuff which reflected the community because they did it. But it provided data to the community. And the community could see that without having to have the language and the numeracy skills. It had data behind it, but it was given to the people. As well as, the other part of that is that it is super critical to have data and such and any of that learnings put into the local language of the people. It is no good to walk into Mathari and give it to them only in English.
Yes.
It just doesn't make sense. What's interesting, though, and we've noted this over the last year and a half, is because of AI and translation, that barrier, which used to cost a huge amount of money and a massive thing, is gone. Every website you log on, you click on the little thing and it's massively translated. We do not realize the immense change that has brought about. And that even trickles down directly. It's not totally accessible by people who are maybe more marginalized, but it is pretty impressive. So absolutely, arts is a critical thing. Do not be, when someone says, oh, that's just qualitative, ignore them. They have no idea what they're talking about. Qualitative and quantitative data is both of value. Qualitative data gives you context. Without context, any data that you create and any policy you create has no value. And that's the challenge here, and it is very challenging with people in the UN system, is to be able to make sure that the context is there and that you're not just getting a bunch of people in the back room kind of coming up with so if Ali and I sat down and decided to create a policy, it would reflect Ali and my policy. You know, I'm a male, he's a male, I'm white, blah, 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 blah. We would have all the biases. And if nobody challenges those biases, then you get a policy that is completely useless. So good question.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Hawa. I was basically minding my business, and now I'm on the panel. That's what I love about the DGC Resource Center. But I was listening a bit as I was doing some work, and actually I was doing some work related to the 2024 UN Civil Society Conference. That's why I'm jumping in. I was just going to sit here and look cute, but since you mentioned something about the conference, I think that it's a struggle that we have had also. So the 2024 UN Civil Society Conference is a premier platform where civil society comes together under the UN banner, convened by this Department of Global Communication, and this specific office where you are, the Civil Society Unit. There have been 68 conferences since 1947. So it's not our first rodeo. But it's very different this year. The last one was in 2019, and this one is in Nairobi, Kenya, 9 and 10. So I'm ecstatic. I'm originally from Sierra Leone. I worked in Kenya for close to 9-10 years with UN Habitat. I keep asking myself, why did it take so long? But, you know, as we said, we're not going to bash anybody. We're going to be there, and it's going to be awesome. What is slightly different is that we are bringing in different civil society networks that we've been working with, whether it's the Congo for ECOSOC or Department of Global Communication affiliated NGOs, the major groups, as well as the Coalition for the UN We Need. Now, we're not going to be able to hit everybody. That's the reality. And also, we have started, late in the planning because money talks, and we didn't have money. So we've had to put this conference together literally in I don't know. Is it even 4 months? I don't know. Maybe 2 months.
2 months.
Yeah. And I'm completely bonkers, but that's okay because I love chaos in a certain way. But so yes, the planning process is being done by civil society. And we have to choose 2 networks that really know the work. We didn't really have time. Normally, it's Department of Global Communications NGOs, and we've extended it to ECOSOC NGOs, people who have a consultative status. So in a sense, UN Department of Global Communication is organizing the conference, but it's being convened by civil society. We have planning committees where it's really civil society doing the work. There's an intergenerational and youth. There's a program subcommittee. There's a accessibility subcommittee. Now, we've had over 4,000 people that have registered. Are we going to be able to get everybody there? I'm not sure. We're going to try to do our best. And we know there are certain countries, not only Egypt, but Saudi, also where you have these issues, even China to some extent. You don't really have NGOs. They're called something else. We've done our best to attract everybody, but unfortunately, the reality is that we won't be able to get everybody. So do you need to be in Nairobi? It would be great if you're there, but you can still activate whether you're there or not. In addition to what's going to be going on in Nairobi, even before we get there, there are virtual events that are going on. I worked with Viva la Vida in China to do a pre-China conference, just to inform people about the conference and to activate youth leaders in China. I always feel that Asia is a gateway that we really need to bust open, in terms of involvement in the UN. So you could decide, we have different calls for the conference, and they've passed now. but we had a call for off-site events that it can happen either before, during, or after the conference, because this conference is being organized as a lead up to the Summit of the Future. So, we don't know if we're going to be able to influence or change anything, but the voices of civil society are going to be there. One of the major things that will come out is we are encouraging civil society to create impact coalitions. So whether it's on youth engagement or, I don't know, I'm making it up, gender issues. There was a call also, I think over 20 submissions came for impact coalitions that could continue to focus on topics that could lead into the Summit of the Future. The conference itself is being led by 3 co-chairs in the planning process. You have Maher Nasser, who's from the UN. And the most important part is you have 2 civil society heads. You have Nudara Youssef and you have Carol Gongo, who are both Global North, Global South, leading this process. So they will have a summary, a co-chair's summary from civil society perspective. This conference, what is really exciting, it has great buying, not only from civil society, but from member states. We have about 100 and I think something member states representatives who have registered to go to the conference. And that's a combination of people that are stationed here in New York and people who are stationed in Nairobi. Doug will tell you, Nairobi is just like New York. You have representation from all member states. We have also a lot of interest from media and a lot of interest from the UN system. In Nairobi, every UN entity has a representative office in the complex there, the UN headquarters. So we're really excited to get that really mix and that sort of landscape of voices, bringing civil society, UN, media, and everybody else together. And I'm hoping for the best. I'm excited to be going back to Kenya and to be part of this. I'm the focal point for intergenerational and youth, and they have some phenomenal things they have planned. And most of this you will be able to catch online. And also the unfortunately the subcommittees are not going to be online, but the main parts of the conference will be. So the conference, everybody can't be there, but at least talking about the International Youth Conference, that's a product that came out of the 2019 UN Civil Society Conference that took place in Utah. The young people came up with an idea, they had their kind of declaration, and they took it and they ran. So, there are positive things that can come out of this conference. We don't want it to stay in Nairobi. We want it to, come into the Summit of the Future, but even beyond that. So check out the website, www.un.org/civil society, and see what you can tap into virtually. And if you're going to be there, Karibuni, Kenya. Over to you.
If you sit perhaps there, the camera can see you better.
All right, thank you so much for the space to speak, even though we're after the time of the event. I'm Noor Muhammad. I'm also a climate activist from Egypt. I want to highlight something maybe something that was not into perspective when it comes to the data collection process, and also give some recommendations for the International Informal Youth Summit of the Future. So when it comes to the data collection process, I'm not sure whether this has been into perspective or not. But an issue from a global South perspective is a safety issue, because the lack of data is not only because of the lack of resources or lack of technical ability to collect the data, but there's also a crackdown about data collection, especially about issues about gender, like the sensitive issues that the SDG tackles. So by tapping into youth in that spectrum, there needs to be a protection mechanism to ensure that young people who are also involved in the data collection process are safe and are not being jeopardized because of it. So that's something that I just wanted to highlight. Regarding the Informal Summit of the Future, I just wanted to tap into some maybe food for thought as well as recommendations. I just have to reiterate his point, because one of the greatest frustrations is the lack of youth voices in this summit. So there needs to be youth voices, not just in the form of youth representatives or speakers, but also for the people on the floor. They need to speak more. And I would also like to propose the restructuring of the format. We don't want a regular summit with people sitting in this regular platform. I would much rather small events and then one plenary for youth, rather than having a lot of people, a lot of places a counter and then saying we're done. So I think that's also something that we need to tap into. From a logistical perspective, I also would like to highlight the need for funding because this is a huge
Yeah.
issue for as many youth as possible from like the most vulnerable communities. And I think this is something that you guys are already working on. And also the application process, because every application process is in English, and I'm privileged enough to understand English, but not everyone understands it. Not everyone knows the technical details. There are experts of the lived experience that we've also like seen here, but we need more people from that background who might not understand the data, but they have lived it, so they can relate the stories. One more thing that I wanted to highlight is regarding the outcome of the event. Because more often than not, outcomes are declarations, and we want more of the declarations, and we want youth to be involved in those actions as well. So we want concrete action points to come out of that, and to see how we as young people could also tap into that. So yeah, I hope it is
Yeah, I had a really similar point. My name is Shannon. I'm from Canada. I work in public and global health, and we'll try to keep it brief, but appreciate you keeping the session open a little longer. So,
Could you sit there? Perhaps it would be much better for the camera.
Have a camera.
Yes, exactly. It's going on UN VIP TV, so it's.
It's still live.
So, very similar point. I just wanted to note that, you know, when we talk about accessibility, there's of course the baseline element of translation, having things available online so that people who are not able to come in person can participate. But the very simple concept that is, you know, simple in theory, more challenging in terms of implementation, is how we actually talk about these issues. Because as a number of people have mentioned, there's so many people across the globe who don't know what the SDGs are. They don't, even if they're working on topics related to the SDGs, they're not aware of the framework, they're not aware of how what they do contributes to these larger goals. And the UN, like, you know, so many workplaces are guilty of these formats that are just boring a lot of the time, to be frank. And particularly when we're talking about youth involvement, you know, creating a zero draft and posting it online and expecting people to read pages and pages and provide their input.
44 pages.
Yeah, exactly. Is not realistic. It's not a realistic reflection of human behavior. Having, you know, lectures that are very one-directional, it's just, it's not an effective way to seek input. And more importantly than the engagement piece, it's not an effective way to get people interested and feeling passionate about this work, which is what we need at a point in time when it's so critical for us to all be taking collective action towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So what I would love to see for the Informal Summit of the Future is for informal to mean, you know, not necessarily disorganized, but informal in the way that we talk about and the way that we approach some of these issues, which is maybe not those very traditional channels of, you know, panel discussions and lectures, like maybe some smaller group discussions. And thinking about the way that we actually talk about the SDGs in plain language that is understandable and engaging for everyone. Because when we continue to use these formats that are pretty dry and, you know, not accessible to so many people, we in these rooms don't even pick up the skills of being able to speak about these issues in language that we can transfer to our communities and get more people, you know, engaged and interested and passionate. So that is what I would really love to see for the Informal Summit of the Future.
Ali, before you start, because for me, I'm really thinking I'm going to be the opposite of Doug. I'm about to retire after 38 years at the UN on the 31st, and I'm going to jump into civil society. So you're going to have to give me some pointers. But and I want to commend you and Habitat for really the way that they have been working in combining the arts, media, with the policy. I mean, that's something that, you know, when I was there, you know, I learned, and I try to bring that into my job here. But it's not easy sometimes to bring those things into this sort of straitjacket community. And one thing that I've noticed that when the UN does use these sort of other forms of media of engagement, it's great. But one thing I can step back and say, since I'm half within civil society, is that it's exciting for that moment. And then it's done. So I think we need your help, because I will be jumping into, you know, joining Ali. You know, how do you marry these, you know, traditional panel, this 244 pages, into that excitement that you might see in, you know, the ECOSOC Youth Forum? Because it's great when it happens. It's great when it's happened, and I've even planned some of them, and I've experienced some of them, and then I'm wondering, hey, wait a minute, what next? So Ali, over to you.
So what you just mentioned, both of you mentioned about, I think the same thing about the format, and it should not be boring. And one of the way that we operate is very democratic way that we take input from young people. And when we started the planning process of IYC 9 and IYC 10 at the same time, because IYC 10 is the Informal Youth Summit of the Future, we did long hours meeting with the team that is our planning team is ranging from 16 years old to going on, like the youngest one is 16-year-old. And one thing, they all say the same thing. So we changed the entire format of the IYC 9, and moving forward, we're going to do it in 10. So for the first time, we are going to have every day 2 plenary and 6 workshops. These workshops are these small conversations, and we plan it all like there are only 2 plenary sessions, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, and between that, there are 6 workshops every day, and it's 4-day conference. So what you're talking about is the in-person 24 workshops and 8 plenaries. So we did change that. This is for the first time that we are experimenting, because we do have this capacity of experimenting. We're doing at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, the Public Affairs Department that are hosting us. They gave us the whole campus. They say that you have all the rooms. So we have the capacity to do these smaller programs, and it will all be streamed online. For the people who can attend it, they want to attend in person, they can. If they want to be part of it online, they can be part of it online. Another way of inclusion is that what we're going to do at the Informal Youth Summit of the Future is that have the sessions 1A in the local languages. If someone wants to organize a session in Spanish, they can do that. If they want to organize a session in Hindi, they can do it. If someone wants to organize a session in Arabic, they can do it. That is another way. And the third way of the inclusion is like if someone wants to actually do an in-person session or a version of the conference in their own country, they're open to do that. We will provide them the technical resources and the platform that we have, and we can literally help them in identifying and mobilizing the resources that they can to do this. So these are different ways that we are going to engage young people into the informal Youth Summit in that way, because our aim is to do absolutely opposite. I know we all know that the process that takes place across the street at the headquarters is very closely tied and closed and very exclusive. So this is what we think, that the time is changing, and we think that young people's voices should be included into the process, not just consultations. Like there are informal and formal consultations taking place. As you say, there's 0 draft, 244 pages. But then you would be looking where your input is in those 244 pages. So the one thing Doug mentioned about declaration is something that we should consider having it for our IYCs as well, having declaration, not declaration at the end of it, because what we do at the end of the conference is like we ask young people to go back in their communities, make some impact and report back to us with the data, which they do, and then we have to verify that data. That's a long process. But this is something like more of the thing we want to do in inclusion. I like your idea of having the registration form in different languages. We will do that.
Yeah.
We will 100% gonna have the registration form in different languages. And so we will definitely do that. More ideas, we open to have more ideas. That's why we're saying that it's informal, because we're not getting in trouble. He's not getting in trouble. Hawa's not getting in trouble. So, because it's informal, and you can do as many things as you can be creative, and when you do it with perfection, then the people across the street gonna see that these young people, independent, without the accreditation of any member state, came forward and did that program that is very perfect. This is a way that we want to show the member state and the UN system that these young people, when integrated into the system, can make things happen in a perfect way. It's not just have to be very formal, closely tied, or there's very exclusivity behind it, like you can only be part of the system if you are with the member state, or you are a youth delegate of the member state, because there's a competition going on in that avenue as well. So it's very difficult, but we, with the civil society organization, UN departments and organizations, we're pretty much open in having across the board inclusion and engagement. So advice well taken, and we're open to all advices until we start planning process.
So Ali, how can you be informally formal, right?
Yes, yes.
I was thinking when you're
jump in
talking.
here on
Yes.
because I'm going to be critical of both us, the UN system, but as well as what I have, the data I have collected and gone through. We need to use AI. It's across the board, we have to. And what I find interesting is in my too many years experience in doing youth work, is that youth have always been at the forefront. They've always been the ones saying, we know technology, not now. People, AI is like, what about us? And I get it. I get that AI, should we be distrustful? It's fake news, it's fake data, it's all this kind of stuff. But so let me give you an example of how we are looking at using AI. We have a program called Youth 2030 Cities. It's supposed to be the localization of the SDGs, and it's funded by this great foundation called Foundation Wagner, based out in Geneva. And they said, use AI. And we're like, okay. So then we start creating surveys. We have a scorecard, and we basically did a census. It was crazy. And it's too big, it's whatever. Then we said, okay, let's not look at this deductive stuff. Let's look at inductive. So if someone lands on the webpage and says, I want to be involved in Youth 2030 Cities, I want to make a difference, I want to localize the SDGs. The first thing they're going to get on the front page is say, what do you do? And it just pour everything in, stick in every article, everything you've got interviews, you've got video, you've got audio, dump it all in and pop out what SDG you're involved in. Because that's what AI can do. So suddenly, we're not doing the thing that says, okay, let's learn about the SDGs. Let's spend the next 10 days going through the seven SDGs are lovely, but only could be created by UN bureaucrats. 17. The exciting part about it is there's 17 different really nice colors, and they're boxes, and you can carry them. I mean, this is a wonder. Whatever company was paid to do it, it's wonderful. But there are 17 of them. And there are 172 targets. Oh my God, this is crazy making. Okay, back in your box, Mr. Bureaucrat. Fine, but what we can do is inductively have. So if you tell me your story of everything you're doing in the project you're doing, I don't want you to come up with new stuff and whatever. You're doing a community garden. Dump all that data in. AI can create and tell you immediately what SDG. So then you've got past all the language because you are being represented. So suddenly the entry point for these young people into this Youth 2030 Cities, and just to note, we're looking at developing world cities only. We're not looking at developed world like Cali, Colombia, Accra, Ghana, lots of places in India and so on. And it can be whatever language. We don't care because that can be translated. You have to embrace it. We have to get out in front and use this because if you don't use it, it will use you. And that's so. Anyways, I just think that we have and we've always now slipping into my more PhD-ish kind of side. But I mean, if you look up things called asset-based community development, what we do in UN Habitat called youth-led development, which Howard worked with us to develop, all of this says that young people are assets now. And you've got to believe that. You just have to. If you don't believe that, we're way behind. You believe that, then whatever you're doing should relate to an SDG. Then you're back into the data collection process. So you're at SDG 13 or you're at a climate change, let's go look at the targets. And then they make sense to you because immediately you've already been categorized, you already have that. So that's the first step. And then if that's the bar for people being involved in this localization of the SDGs project, SDG cities, then people feel very empowered because they do love the SDGs. People, when you talk about it, when they learn about it, people love the idea. Again, they're pretty colors, and so on. But they also are very meaningful because there's everything. So I think we have to, as much as I think we need to be hypercritical of technology, and I have been for a long time, back in the days of the $100 computer and so on. A lot of times it is BS, but I don't think so. I think this time there's a sea change. And because, like I said before, language, the ability for me to put input in Spanish or Swahili into a system that suddenly puts it out, yes, in the language of those bureaucrats, but you need, as I think was mentioned, you can't leave it behind. Unfortunately, that's the way we're structured. Maybe we'll come up with some other form of governance, but right now that's the way it plays. And I think the declarations, Pact for the Futures, Local Pact for the Futures, all can be generated, you think, pretty damn quickly. And suddenly we demystified, and this is what I'll end here, demystified the concept of data. You just, please, don't let this be the barrier that you were stopping yourself because someone told you. No. you can create, you can gather, doesn't matter who, I mean, you're going to think there's intersectional barriers of poverty, gender, there's always going to be some barriers, but the barriers are much less than they used to be, I would say, literally from a year ago.
Thank you.
So you're saying that the youth are uniquely responsible for embracing AI?
No, but I'm saying that the youth, I feel that young people are very skeptical of it.
More than older people?
I find that my mother is much better at AI than I am. I mean, she loves it. I mean, she's become a research queen. I have no idea. This is, again, qualitative data that I've just seen, but I'm listening to this whole conversation and it's not been brought up, and I'm like, what's happening? So I'm definitely not dumping this on youth and saying you have to do it because you are responsible. What I am saying is I would suggest not using it at your own risk, because it is a train that's left the station and it's barely
We are using it, by the way. Like IYC, we used it at our last conference. We just didn't tell anybody about it.
That's the other problem. You don't know.
It was the whole data sense experiment we did, and we have the exact numbers of people who are like engaging with us on continuous basis while the conference was live all around the world. And we got data from 173 countries that they were engaged with us.
Right.
We created the whole mechanism, whole software, and
Scratch.
but from the scratch. It's still in the progress of the evolution, like how we can make it more better.
The amount of policy.
Let me say something real quick about the AI. We just solidified the AI that when anybody engages with IYC in May, that you could be anywhere around the world, and the minute you log in with IYC, you'll be able to hear it in your own language. We just got the contract solidified with the company that's because of the AI. We embed AI in IYC. We have some other things that we're building, but we're not saying anything yet. But we are also very clear about the safety mechanisms of technology, because AI can also be a threat.
Yes.
And so we're very clear about the threats of AI, threats of data, because in the process, I was with the CSW group, and there's a group of folks at CSW in March that talk about how this group of women and men can't talk about being gay or lesbian in some parts of Africa because they will be murdered. So how can people be honest about themselves, not being threatened with their government, if the AI gives their geolocation and everything they're saying, and then somebody taps into that? So we're very clear about the use of AI. We're using non-denominational variables. We're making it very clear not using your GPS location to the point. We'll say your country, but not your actual address, because we understand the dangers. So we're very clear about that. But we are engaging in the AI. We are engaging in the technology. Don't get me wrong. We are totally doing this geek thing. We're geeking out.
Never believe that technology. I mean, this might be when you guys were a bit younger, but in the terms of when Obama came in, and everything was social media. It was like, we are going to win the world. Like, this is amazing. Powered by democracy will flourish. No, it's a neutral tool. So who uses the AI best now? It's the Obamas of the world. Let me tell you, it's the whole other side. It's incredibly populist. And I mean, and last story, I know I'm speaking too much, but we were working in a mapping project in another slum in Nairobi called Kibera. And we did a map, and we geolocated all these young guys and young women who were working. And one of the young guys looked at it, and he said, that's where you live. And he's like, and his words were, I can never hide. And that's the reality of living. And back to whether it's your sexuality, whether it's poverty, you have to do things to survive. And if the wrong people get there on the data, yes, you're in trouble. So do not go into this with any rose-colored glasses. I mean, this is who's owning it, who's running it. You have to know. But on the other hand, if you don't use it, and you also can control. So there's no right answer to this, but I just think it's.
So, first of all, compliments because I have participated in many UN events and it is not at all like this. So, heartiest congratulations, and you all have been successful at making it meaningful. There are two things which I wanted to say. I work very closely with an NGO, which is having a tribal neighborhood back in India, and the point which Ma'am was mentioning, how do we bring their voices here? The first of all, the barrier which is like if they are not accredited civil society organization representing at the UN, they would never have access to it. And especially youth, when we talk about, it's all in universities and schools. So how do we ensure that the registration process becomes accessible to the universities and schools, which can also be an authorized organization to represent, and not just the civil society organization? So that's one point which I had. Another point which I had is when we are saying to make it engaging, the point which is coming up, like why, how do we not make it boring? Design thinking in itself is a beautiful science which makes the discussions engaging. At the same time, we can capture very meaningful output out of it so that it's not lost.
Yeah.
So design thinking processes like storyboarding and all of these could be used for capturing all of that input which is coming in, and which is not then lost in the process. And then, as rightly mentioned, AI could use, it could be text, it could be images, it could be all of this could be used to churn it out and bring meaningful things out of it. And one more thing which I want to say for the summit is, when for the engagement we can bring in challenges, localized challenges, and get people to actually sit on
Work
it,
on that solution.
brainstorm on it, bring in the solution there and then, and take back, to their localized context, implement it and bring it back for the next one for discussion. So it becomes an iterative process.
Very good.
There, rather than just waiting that they find meaning in whatever we are discussing about SDGs.
If I could take the registration question. So the UN is big. There are over 50 agencies and departments and offices of the UN.
Sure.
So the Civil Society Conference has this theme for a particular reason, because we need to know that it's open to anyone. And for this particular conference, of course, DGC, ECOSOC, or any NGO that is legally bona fide and can have their registration, because we need to know that you are legit, right? Or because we are in Africa, so any NGO in the Economic Commission of Africa area, whether it's, I'm using Egypt now, or Sierra Leone, or Ghana. But then if you go to UNESCO, they also have, criteria. And in this civil society unit, Department of Global Communications, we have the NGLS Liaison Service. The job of that outfit is to make sure that anybody ad hoc who doesn't have any criteria can go to high-level UN meetings. For example, right now they've been getting names for the SIDS conference in Antigua and Barbuda. They did the migration conference, or the universal health. So you have those NGOs that have the ECOSOC status, it's automatic, and then everybody else comes through NGLS. So there are ways for large, medium, and smaller voices to come to the UN. Also, I think it is our responsibility. And I always put myself also in civil society, that we also have to activate at the local level. There are many UN offices, like UN Department of Global Communications has UN information centers in over 60 countries. So they are working closely with CBOs, NGOs, CSOs, right, at that level. But we also, you coming here, need to go back to your local communities and activate and inform people. I always say, even sometimes, like, I don't like to speak that much anymore, when I get a speaking engagement, I defer to young people in my network, right? I get up and give the seat to somebody else. Or when I hear something, I'm busy on WhatsApp all day long, sending information to people. Now I have to use AI since I can do it in different languages. But I mean, we also need to go back and make sure that we spread the word. I should let you know for the Summit of the Future, I don't know if it's out yet, but we were just having internal meetings, and there will be activation days for civil society, just like what they had, I think it was for the SDG Summit. So that's being planned also. I don't know how they will work on that, but I mean, please sign up to our newsletter in the civil society unit. I don't remember anything, so I'll ask one of my colleagues to give you the information, because we try to publicize. It's self-subscription, so that you know what's going on. And when you have that information, don't hold on to it, pass it on to the next person. That's the simple, answer that I would have.
Thank you so much. It was great conversation. And I see that now we're ending a conversation because no one have nothing to say. Not that we're putting a force break on, like putting the handbrake on, like, okay, we're just stopping it. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this engaging and getting engaged within the conversation. So I would just like to ask the speakers, the guests, to give their concluding remarks if they have any, so we can formally close the event. And I would like to begin with Alex.
Well, it's passionate to participate in meetings like these, because just by the end, I've heard some very interesting challenge. First on AI, I think the warnings about let's govern AI and not allowed to be governed by AI is a very critical question. And I've heard from the audience that this kind of message. And if you remember, this is one of the sections of the approved resolution on AI by the whole UN that was just done historically in March this year. The second question is about the divide, because AI is enlarging the divide. So basically, we are going to have significant acceleration of divides with the emergence of technology like AI. So these are two examples of questions that we debated, and I think. But my last message it's about this critical involvement of youth in decision-making process. So I think we have to make sure that as part of the Pact of the Future, as part of the Summit of the Future, everything we have been discussing is part of the decisions that can inform action for the future. A big thank you, and thank you to my colleagues Candice and Higang. And we are available to work with you on whatever you think can be an improvement for putting the youth to actually do transformative action.
Thank you so much. Next, I would like to invite for the concluding remarks to Yigang Lee.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, colleagues. I think for this session, that's just as Mr. Alex summarized. The decision-making that we will involve the youth in is critical for the next step. That will be my only compliment to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hala?
Well, I think I really have enjoyed this conversation. I agree with you. It's really been very meaningful, very sort of non-UN. Although I should let you know that there are many people at the UN that are like us here that are also forging, on this path, and I think that's great. And I guess, as I said, I'm about to retire after many years at the UN, and I'm looking forward to being a voice from civil society, really making my former employer accountable. But as I do that, I'm a great youth advocate, and I've done a lot of great work with youth. But I just celebrated my 60th birthday last week, Tuesday, and I'm reflecting a lot because I'm the caregiver for my 89-year-old mom. So it was a big decision whether I was going to come here or not today because I'm at home with her. But when I think about Miro, Ali, Doug, and the type of work that they're doing, I knew that I had to be here and to support this conversation. But in being a caregiver for my mom, now I'm getting emotional because
I always personalize the work that I do at the UN, and that's how it becomes meaningful for me and for my beneficiaries. I love young people, and I'm also youthful myself. But I've been thinking in the last couple of years, what about the aging population? I'm dealing with that reality in my house myself. And we need to look for a way, and we talk about intergenerational, it's such a big word, but what does that really mean? But how do we bring the older generation, the aging generation, which I'm creeping into myself, and the younger generation? You know, because I think it's great that we're advancing youth leadership, youth this, but for 60 years, I've been listening to the historical or oral stories of my mother, that older generation, and it has inspired me to support young people. So I think as we go out there, we need to look for ways of really, really cementing that gap between the younger generation and the aging population. That's what I will leave you with.
Very good.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have several thoughts that I would like to share. First thought is gratefulness. So I'm really grateful that we are here together, partners, friends, comrades on this journey with Ali, International Youth Conference, our DGC and Future Civil Society Connection, and Doug, and also Alex. So we are a better world is possible. We are unstoppable was a slogan we were chanting down there on Doug Hammer's Plaza on the preparations for the Rio +20 summit. Ashley was with us there already, Jean-Paul with Savannah. And so this partnership approach is very important, that we work together, and through this we get powerful. We can complement one another. And the second message I have is for the UN system. I love the UN system, but I get sometimes angry that it's not delivering better. It's the only structure we have. It has the mandate, and it's delivering perhaps 1% of what it could or should. And part of it is also that it's locked in this UN charter with this Security Council and so on. Also the UN summit, it was announced it's the once in a generation opportunity, but then it says again, we will not touch the charter and its intergovernmentally negotiations, and it will decide by head of state. And I'm asking, where are the non-state actors? So it's the UN system is running on an operation system which is soon 80 years old. It's like a computer which you would have running on an 80 years old operation system, and the system is locked. You cannot provide any update. So the Summit of the Future is now a big update opportunity, and we should think big, ambitious, because the crises are so big, and we cannot afford to have an ineffective global structure. So we have to deliver better, and I really believe in our power as the non-state actors. We shall imagine a better, desirable future and work towards it, and build structures which are complementing the UN system. And that's why we are here. That's why the Informal Youth Summit of the Future will take place. We will provide all our channels and resources to support it, and also to bring the ideas and also the creative force, the music, the art, the documentaries, the new stories of young people, citizens in general, to this global effort, because the crises are so huge, but a better world is possible. We are unstoppable.
Yes.
Yeah, this is usually where we go for the inspirational. I'm maybe coming at it from a different perspective. This is going to be a hellish few years. I mean, it just is. I'm sorry. You just can't. I think we need to hold those dear that you have. Make sure that you keep your community around you. Really take that as your values. I mean, I think that we can speak about all the possibilities. I mean, I went off on AI and all this kind of stuff, but I think what's going to be really important is that we try to keep and maintain that, both your local community and your local family and your global community. Because without that, what's going to happen over the next few years is going to be that much worse. And let's try to make sense of it, because it doesn't. Right? I can't make sense of it. I have no idea. I mean, my children are 20-something, just left our home and that kind of stuff. I talk to them, and their future is, the way they talk about their future is very strange. And it's not something that my parents, who came out, came out of the war, and then they had this huge hope and all this. So I just really think, hold each other tight, try to keep connected. This is what something like this kind of meeting allows you. Meeting people of like mind, but don't only meet people of like mind. And when someone tells you that's the enemy, question it, because it's not. The people are human. We make lots of mistakes and so on. I think we have to, as much as possible, seek out humanity in wherever we're going, and seek out those who we can attempt to work with, even if it's difficult. I don't know if that's an inspirational thing to you, but I just really think that we have to move forward, eyes wide open, on where we're going to go from here.
Thank you. Margot, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to thank everyone here, Paula, Miro, you both, Ali, and also Doug. We're a family, we're not just a global family, we're a family. And we learn lessons all the time. And during the pandemic, although we were New York based here, big part of the NGO community, we took that opportunity to do outreach. We included, and now we have partners with us that are in Nairobi, Nigeria, Zambia. You just met Alina, and we have El Salvador, South America. We don't want to stop. We want to continue that. We can't go back to what we were before. And all that you see here, all of these people have really helped all of us to really strengthen our organizations. Howard, you're always welcome. We just formed a partnership with Miro. Ali, we always want to support you. We always will. You're a great moderator, and you're so important to our community. One thing I want to say, after 32 with UN, you're not a youth. You're always a youth. You're a youth at heart. And by the way, the future is now. So it's not then, we're now, and we have to make a difference. And Doug, you mentioned it. We just faced a war. Not just the pandemic, but it's all around us. So one thing, just please remember SDG 17, become partners. Support each other. Thank you, everybody.